What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today with another Tale of the Tape episode. We're going to be talking about Jameson Williams, wide receiver from the Alabama Crimson Tide, in this video today. If this is your first episode of Tale of the Tape that you're checking out, maybe this is the first video on the channel that you're checking out, hit the subscribe button, like the video down below, and comment any of your thoughts. Basically, what we're going to be doing today is telling the entire story from start to finish of Jameson Williams in his collegiate career and in his prospects for the NFL draft and for rookie drafts for us in Dynasty. We have a whole, playlist of Tale of the Tape episodes. If you're looking for Breece Hall and, Isaiah Spiller, Drake London, all those guys have been done already. You can go back and watch those. If you guys are interested in more Dynasty rookie content, you can check out the Patreon, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Link is in the description for that. Dynasty rankings manifesto, bucketed rankings by, age bucket. We have top 100s for Superflex, one quarterback. By becoming a Patreon, you also get priority questions for Dynasty decisions, written player cards on these prospects, as well as drawing for listener leagues as well. So if you're interested in that, like I said, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. But without further ado, let's hit the intro. Okay, so Jameson Williams, wide receiver from the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is his tale of the tape. Jameson Williams, age 20.9 years old, 6'2", 189 pounds. Of course, we'll get official measurements on him in Indianapolis for the combine. We will not get testing for him, though, because he suffered an ACL tear at the end of the college football season in the college football playoffs. So basic information, high school measurables, all that kind of stuff. 4-star recruit, 13th wide receiver in the 2019 recruiting class out of Missouri. He committed to Ohio State. He struggled his first 2 years at Ohio State to get consistent playing time behind Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. KJ Hill was also there, who's in the NFL now. A talented sophomore, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, who will be a very, very high rookie draft pick next year. He transfers to Alabama after 2 years of not really producing at Ohio State. In 2021, breakout season this past year with Alabama, tallying 79 catches, 1,572 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns in 15 games played. The big questions for Jameson Williams are, why was he unable to produce at Ohio State and garner any real playing time? Because, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are obviously really good talents, but if Jameson Williams is this first round caliber wide receiver, early second round caliber wide receiver, he should be able to produce more than, 275 receiving yards over 2 seasons, which is what he basically did. And, one of those seasons was shortened due to COVID, but still, if the ACL injury could affect his return to play in 2022, we also want to know, is he going to be back on the field for that crucial development time, right? The first training camp, the first NFL snaps, the preseason, all that stuff is crucial to rookie wide receivers. And as we know, the unsuccessful nature of face planners, guys that don't produce their rookie year, lose a lot of Dynasty rookie ADP. And then, therefore we have questions about them going forward. That is all concerns that we have about Jameson Williams, but let's start with the 6 fundamental traits of wide receivers. Again, we determine these 6 traits basically as the basics of playing wide receiver, what you need to do at the bare minimum, at the fundamental level to be a successful NFL wide receiver. And also we determine these 6 traits because they are easy to evaluate, easy to cross-reference with metrics to determine if what we're seeing on film is in fact happening. So the first one is how well a wide receiver can separate and run routes and, get open basically. So separation, route running, how a wide receiver gets open, whatever you want to call it. Jameson Williams is very good in this category. Obviously, when you have 4.3 speed, and if you guys know anything about Jameson Williams, you know that he's fast, you're naturally going to separate well. If your first question is, can Williams separate similar ways that Jalen Waddle separated last year with elite agility, that horizontal speed that Jalen Waddle exhibited? He's not like that. Jameson Williams is much more like a Henry Ruggs, like a Marquise Brown mold of a straight line athlete, more than the horizontal threat that Jalen Waddle was coming out last year. Because of his athleticism, his ability to separate comes with ease. It's one thing that stood out to me was Jameson Williams' ability to use his deep threat speed to also work intermediately and short as well. Because a lot of the times you'll see, and I saw this from Henry Ruggs coming out a couple of years ago as well, DBs are scared shitless of their straight line speed and of their ability to take the top off. So they'll open their hips early and allow wide receivers to work back towards the line of scrimmage and run comebacks and, dig routes very easily because they're scared so badly of the deep ball that they'll allow that short area separation because at least they're not getting beaten for a 40-yard touchdown. I think Jameson Williams did a very, very good job of taking advantage of that at the collegiate level. You'll see a number of clips of him separating. There's one where he does, in fact, get a guy to open his hips early and work back over the middle and generate a lot of separation that way. And I think that's what he can bring to an NFL team. In terms of the metrics, 143 quarterback rating when targeted, ranked second in the class. He ranked second in yards per reception as well. Both of these because he can create explosive plays. He's very good at creating plays downfield and breaking off long touchdowns. He also ranked ninth in the class in yards per route run and above average in the class with an 85.1 PFF receiving grade. So he can win consistently. He can win for the big plays. All that kind of stuff is included in the Jameson Williams package. Number two is hands. So once you get open, once you're able to create that initial separation, are you able to catch the ball? Are you able to make simple catches? Are you able to make catches outside your frame? Are you able to make contested catches? All that kind of goes into hands. This was the biggest weakness that I saw with Jameson Williams' game. And I don't just mean concentration drops, because he did definitely have a lot of them. And a 7.1% drop rate was definitely top 10 in the class. But what I also mean, and the concerning thing for me, was his ability or his inability, to catch balls outside of his frame and make contested catches. So what I saw with Jalen Waddle last year was a guy who, despite being a small receiver and a fast receiver, was able to go up and climb the ladder and catch the ball. What I didn't see from Jameson Williams was anytime he was faced with heavy contact, anytime he had to, go up and get something, he wasn't able to do it consistently. In fact, he had the second lowest contested catch rate of any receiver in this class. There's about 30 wide receivers that I have in my database, and he ranked second to last in contested catch rate with 40% contested catch rate. Now, the bright side is that he's very fast, and his athleticism should limit the frequency of him having to make contested catches at the NFL level, but he's going to still have to be able to work through heavy contact, because the defenders at the NFL level are faster, they're stronger, they're smarter. They're going to be, the windows are going to tighten up in the NFL. You're not going to be open for 4 or 5 yards of separation like you were at Alabama playing against, subpar competition. And that needs to improve at the next level. He needs to get better in the contested catch rate, and he needs to get better with his hands just becoming an asset to his game. Now, number 3 is yards after catch. So once you get open, once you catch the ball, what can you do with it? How can you create with the ball in your hands? Obviously, Jameson Williams is an angle eraser. You're going to see a number of clips of him just absolutely blowing past defenders. He's got legit, 4.2, 4.3 speed. Like, this is a guy that is bar none the fastest receiver in this class. He can house a slant route without being touched. And back to what I said about Jalen Waddle, the only issue I have with Jameson Williams after the catch is his ability to win with agility. He is much more of a straight line athlete than he is a guy that's going to win with agility and win with elusiveness after the catch. He tied for first in yards after catch per reception in the 2022 class. But like I said, you'll see many of these plays of him just blowing past people. He's not making people miss. He's not necessarily winning with physicality either. He ranked 15th in the class in tackles avoided after the catch with 15.38%. So he's not a guy that's going to break tackles with physicality consistently. He's not a guy that's going to make people miss consistently. He's pretty much just going to run past you. And pointing again to the fact that he's a bit stiff, needs to work on that east-west part of his repertoire. He's obviously a very north and south type of wide receiver. We need to get him with a footwork coach, most likely at the next level, and get him to work on that agility, because it is a problem for him to some degree. He's very fast. He's very, athletic, but he needs to become a little bit more elusive, both in his route running and after the catch. Now, when it comes to usage, where does he win? Is he a 3-level threat? Does he win downfield? Is he winning only on design touches? Is he winning only from the slot? Where does Jameson Williams win? He's the best downfield wide receiver in this class that I've seen. I don't even think it's particularly close. Obviously, Treylon Burks is a guy that's going to win downfield consistently as well. But from both a traits and a production standpoint, Jameson Williams is the scariest 3-level threat in this class because of the speed that he has, combining his athletic gifts with his downfield ability to track the ball. He has good body control when he needs it. The only thing that he needs to do better is become a better contested catch wide receiver down the field. But again, because of his speed, because of his athleticism, I'm willing to give him a little bit of a pass in that department. I also think he does have a lot of slot versatility if a team wanted to deploy him in the slot at the next level. Jameson Williams gained 730 yards on only 25 slot catches, 29.2 yards per catch, 5.1 yards per route run from the slot. So this is a dude that wasn't really used in the slot at Alabama or at Ohio State. And I do think he'd be very good in that role at the next level. We saw, the Miami Dolphins use Jalen Waddle that way. We've seen the Raiders before Henry Ruggs decided to be a knucklehead off the field. He was used that way. We've seen Marquise Brown with the Baltimore Ravens used that way. We saw back in his Houston Texans days, Will Fuller was used that way. These deep speed guys can be used in the slot to create mismatches. And I think Jameson Williams excels in that area. When you look at his deep targets overall, he ranked 4th in the class in deep target percentage, 27.8%, of his total targets coming 20 plus yards downfield. As I mentioned, he was 6th in the class with an average depth of target of 14.5 yards. This is a legit deep threat. And at the next level, this is a legit 3-level threat. If he can develop into that, I do think, like I said, he'll need to work on his footwork to be able to refine his short and intermediate game. But if you want to use him on, jet sweeps, if you want to use him on bubble screens, he can definitely do that stuff. And also he can work downfield. The only thing that is probably missing to his game right about now is his ability to win intermediately consistently, because his route running needs some development. It needs some nuance. And like I said, his agilities will need to be developed at the next level. Number 5 is athleticism, natural gifts, right? At 6'2", 189 pounds, Jameson Williams has a genuine case for being the fastest skill player in this class among all the skill positions, wide receivers, running backs, DBs, whatever. He might run the fastest 40 if he were to be testing. Obviously, because he tore his ACL, he will not be testing. On film, it is apparent to me that his movement speed is a notch above anybody else that he played, and that includes when he was playing against Georgia and some of these bigger schools. And he's reported to crack, low 4.3s just sprinting. Since he came onto campus, he's racing Jalen Waddle in practice and keeping up with him. So he is very, very fast. Unfortunately, he will not test. We won't get to see what his actual 40 time was. We won't get to see his agilities also, which is something that I would really love to see about Jameson Williams, because it is a concern for me for him. I would love to see how fast his agilities are. If they were 80th percentile, 90th percentile, I wouldn't have a whole lot of concerns. But if he came in and ran a 4.31 and had, 40th percentile agilities, then that's definitely a concern. He's a lot more of a straight line athlete, as I anticipated from his film. Now, the final trait that we're going to get into has nothing to do with his film. It's his profile on paper. Analytics profile, a big part of our grading system at FSE. We need to see what he did on the field as far as his production is concerned, his age-adjusted production, all that kind of stuff goes into his analytics profile. And when you look at Jameson Williams, he does meet those standard analytics thresholds of breakout age, college dominator, all that kind of stuff. He's in like the 50th percentile, so he's not great in these areas. He's not bad in these areas. He kind of just checks this box, but doesn't, go above and beyond. And he also did declare for the draft as an underclassman, which is important. And he checks that box as well. But the issue lies with Jameson Williams' profile with the couple red flags that he has. And the first red flag being that he had to transfer away from Ohio State. He had to get away from Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson because they were keeping him off the field. And he wasn't able to get on the field consistently or produce. He only had 300 receiving yards over the first 2 seasons of his collegiate career. Didn't have a whole lot of production until his junior season. So that is a red flag of his profile. Number 2 is the fact that he suffered a torn ACL in January of this year, putting the timeline for recovery right around, the 9 to 12 month range that we have for ACL tears. That would put him right around August, September, most likely, as the earliest he could return. So if he has any setbacks, if his, his surgery doesn't go well or whatever the case is, we're talking about October, November, December of his rookie season. And we have to wonder when he gets back on the field, if, he missed way too much time and if he's behind the 8 ball, because missing your first training camp, missing, potentially your first preseason, some of your regular season, that will cause Jameson Williams to be behind the 8 ball and put him at, in danger of falling into that dreaded face planter category. If you pull up the list of rookie receivers that suffered major injuries their seasons, and we saw this last year, even with Rashad Bateman, who suffered, an injury in training camp that kept him out for the first 6-8 weeks of his rookie season. It put him behind the 8 ball, and it stunts their development a little bit. So that is definitely a risk that we have to take into account when we're talking about Jameson Williams and what his prospects are going into rookie drafts and the NFL draft. So let's get into the subjective traits. So these are the traits that we can't quantify, but we can see on film. And again, we weight these less than the ones that are the 6 fundamental traits because we can quantify them. We can cross-reference them to metrics, but things like smarts, nuance, toughness, things like that are basically what I'm talking about with subjective traits. I think this is definitely a raw player in need of some coaching, but I was surprised to see some level of nuance for a 20-year-old first-year starter. Using his speed to work backwards on his routes is definitely something I didn't expect to see from him, but I did, and I was pleasantly surprised. Not the most physically imposing player on the field either. I don't think he's, the toughest, most physical guy in the world. It's apparent that he doesn't have the physical edge of some of the wide receivers in this class as both a blocker and as a runner after the catch. Even when you think of like smaller wide receivers, I think Devontae Smith last year was a lot more physical than him. I think Elijah Moore last year was a lot more physical than him. And those guys are small. They're not, Drake London or Treylon Burks size. So I'm not dinging him from a, toughness relative to those big receivers. I'm dinging him toughness relative to other small receivers that I've seen in recent classes. Overall, he grades pretty average among all these subjective traits, smarts, nuance, toughness. given his overall inexperience at the NFL or at the college level, being a producer, because he only was really on the field this year as a player, and the smarts and awareness definitely need to be developed, and that'll come with more experience. So overall, that's not a big concern, but I gave him kind of an average grade across the board in most of these things. Final grades, we have out of 1100, which is the scale I grade on, 842.5, or a mid-second round talent is where Jameson Williams graded out for me, which basically puts him in a tier with a guy like Chris Olave, David Bell, some of these George Pickens, some of these second-tier wide receivers behind those elite 3 wide receivers, Treylon Burks, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson. He's definitely a notch behind those guys. I would not take him, regardless of where he goes, I would not take him over those top 3 receivers, even if those top 3 receivers got the worst landing spots in the world and he got the best landing spots in the world. I would not take him ahead of those guys. Biggest strengths for Jameson Williams, obviously being that his athleticism and his speed are his calling card. It's the way that he builds his entire game. Separation ability, obviously, as a result of that. Winning after the catch, again, as a result of that. Weaknesses are the analytics profile, what he is on paper, the injury, his hands, and the raw nature of the player that I saw on film. Right around the same grade last year as I gave Amon-Ra St. Brown, as I gave De'Ami Brown, who are both in that mid to late second round range. They were my wide receiver 6 and 7 behind the top 5 wide receivers, Chase Smith, Elijah Moore, Jalen Waddle, and Rashad Bateman. So if he were in last year's class, he would have been my wide receiver 6 behind those top 5 guys. For what it's worth, though, Jameson Williams would have been closer to a late first, early second round grade had he not torn his ACL, because I do have to ding him for that, because it's basically the crucial time in the calendar for when he suffered the ACL, because George Pickens also tore his ACL, but he tore it before the college season. So he's going to be fine for the draft process. He came back on the field towards the end of the season. He's going to be fine for his NFL training camp and rookie season and all that stuff. But it's the fact that Jameson Williams tore it this late in the process. The fact that he's going to miss the combine, miss his pro day, miss, training camp and OTAs, and probably some of the season, preseason as well. So that is a crucial time to tear your ACL. It's not that I'm nervous about him coming back from a torn ACL, because it's a routine injury. It's a routine surgery at this point in time. It's when it happened that it's going to stunt his development a little bit. So comparisons, my pro comparison for Jameson Williams is actually Marquise Brown. I, debated Henry Ruggs. I debated Will Fuller, but Marquise Brown was the guy that stood out to me most. The listed size difference is notable because Jameson Williams is a lot taller than Marquise Brown. He's 6'2" relative to 5'9", 5'10" Marquise Brown. But in terms of the stylistic comparison, potential usage at the next level, Marquise Brown is a very similar player to Jameson Williams. He was a lot, in the mold of a straight line athlete coming out of college, and he developed more into that 3-level threat in his 3rd season. He had a great breakout year. The speed is apparent, but at the next level, we want to see Jameson Williams do what Marquise Brown did. We want to see him develop the short and intermediate areas of the field. That part of his game is not developed right now, but it could develop. He has the tools to develop it. You just need to see that happen at the next level. And Brown basically developed with the same kind of skill set coming out of college. He developed into a 1,000-yard receiver this year, consensus top 30 wide receiver in Dynasty, was on pace to have a very, very productive season in his 3rd year, had Lamar Jackson not gotten injured. And when we talk about best fits, pro projection, this is obviously a Z receiver in the NFL. For those of you guys that know what receiver alignments are, he has slot versatility. He profiles as a wide receiver 1A or 1B for an NFL team. The best fit for him, to me, is a team that has a solidified number 1, solidified X wide receiver. So Jameson Williams can work his blend of special, yards after catch, movement skills, speed, behind that number 1 wide receiver. And so some of the teams that would fit that description would be the New Orleans Saints, if they still have Michael Thomas, the Kansas City Chiefs with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, the Los Angeles Chargers, obviously they have Keenan Allen and Eckler out of the backfield, Green Bay Packers with Devontae Adams, assuming he stays there, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, assuming Chris Godwin leaves. I think they'll be in the wide receiver market. And behind Mike Evans with Jameson Williams make a lot of sense to me. And the Buffalo Bills behind Stephon Diggs, if they wanted to upgrade on the outside or use him in the slot even, in replacement of Cole Beasley. So that's kind of the roles. If he goes to any of those landing spots, like I said, these landing spots are all very good. As you can tell, the teams that I just mentioned, the quarterbacks throwing to some of these, to Jameson Williams, if he went to those teams, that would be ideal for Jameson Williams. I also think that's about the range of the draft that he's going to go to, after pick 20, to pick 40 or so. I think that's probably where the NFL is going to draft him. His path to fantasy superstardom, obviously, allows him to work in a situation with his natural gifts down the field. Ideally, I think Justin Herbert, his number 2 target, would be perfect for Jameson Williams, or Josh Allen's number 2 target. In rookie drafts, if you're wondering where you should draft this guy, in the 108 to 112 range for me, depending on where he gets drafted and what team he goes to. And also depending on where the top running backs go, where the top wide receivers go, where the top quarterbacks go. He's probably going to fit into that back end of the first round range for me. Again, a guy that's a little bit risky because of the injury, but nonetheless is a guy that I think could pay off big time in the way that we saw Jalen Waddle pay off this year. So if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, hit the like button. It takes you 2 seconds. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. Comment any of your thoughts down below. And if you guys have watched, a number of our videos before, but you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, just hit the subscribe button. It's totally free to do so. If you want to unsubscribe at a later date, you can go ahead and do that as well. Definitely appreciate you guys for the support. If you want to support us as well, you can check out the Patreon. Link is in the description for that. If you want to book a consultation with myself or with Danny or with both of us, you can also do that in the link in the description as well. Support our sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy and Manscaped, promo code FSE as well. Appreciate you guys. Peace out. We'll talk to you soon.